confirming one of the two planes departed from Boston Airport. They are unsure whether the plane was hijacked. As you can see there, we are replaying that vision of the second plane crashing into that second tower. There was some speculation earlier that the fuselage of the first plane crash may still have lodged itself somehow in the second and triggered the second explosion, but the pictures seem to belie that. As we said, significant chaos in New York at the moment, mass evacuations. All landings and takeoffs, aviation in the United States has been ground to a halt as authorities try to determine how to put a stop to these unfolding explosions and apparent terrorist attacks. The President addressed the nation a short time ago. Again, I need to remind you, not just the two attacks on the World Trade Center, this was followed by an apparent deliberate terrorist attack on the Pentagon. The White House has been evacuated tonight. There's an explosion at the Pentagon, and the President addressed the nation a short time ago. He is making his way to Washington, but here's what he had to say to the nation just a little while ago.
Today we've had a national tragedy. Two airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand.
US President George W. Bush. We're endeavouring to cross to our correspondent in New York, Michelle Stone, but as you can imagine, the scenes are quite chaotic and it is continuing to be difficult to ascertain the communications. Let's cross back now to CNN for more breaking news.
Billowing out of the front tower now, and then about a half an hour later, just as emergency crews were converging on the scene, as eyewitnesses were gathering on the street corners, a second plane drove in too, and you can see that plane coming around the building right now in this tape, and there you can see the hit as it comes through what looked to me, at least, and this is the first time I've seen that tape, come through the back side of the tower. I guess that would be the south side of the tower, and then the smoke and flame coming out the front side. Again, that was about a half hour after the first attack, which was at about 8:45. Look, you want to be careful here. We don't want to get too far ahead of this, but obviously this has all the appearances of an extraordinarily well-coordinated and devastating terrorist attack here in the United States. Certainly nothing like it since Oklahoma City, and nothing like it here in New York since the terrorist attack on the same World Trade Center buildings in February of 1993. At the Pentagon, a plane or a helicopter has crashed, apparently as part of whatever this operation has been, and Jamie McIntyre is there. Jamie, what are you hearing?
Just interrupting the coverage there for another piece of late-breaking news. Middle Eastern Television is tonight confirming they have received a telephone call from a Palestinian group claiming responsibility. That's Abu Dhabi, television in the Middle East, claiming they received a telephone call from the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, a group just calling themselves the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine. So it does appear the continuing conflict in the Middle East may well have contributed to these apparent terrorist attacks. What you're watching now, two pictures there. It does appear to be Washington, D.C. We can confirm mass evacuations across the city. The Pentagon, there has been an explosion and fireball above the Pentagon. The White House has been evacuated. The President is making his way there. This, of course, comes within about an hour from two explosions in New York City at the World Trade Center. Two planes apparently crashing into both towers. As yet, we cannot confirm how many people may be injured, exactly what is occurring right now in the streets of Manhattan, other than to confidently assume absolute pandemonium and chaos. Emergency crews are rushing to the scene. The FBI is desperately trying to contain the situation. Aviation across the country has ground to a halt based on the suspicion that these planes may well have been hijacked, and the only way that they can contain the situation immediately is to cancel all takeoffs and landings, to grind the entire aviation across the United States to a halt, as the President is endeavouring to make his way to Washington to a secure bunker there. Air Force One is, of course, being cleared and may well be one of the few planes that can move in the United States. In terms of the Pentagon, I realise we're on New York right now, but in terms of the Pentagon, eyewitnesses were saying they saw a helicopter circling the building moments before, disappearing behind the building, hearing a loud explosion, and then seeing a fireball erupt in the sky. In terms of the World Trade Center and the vision you're seeing there now, eyewitness reports believe it was a kamikaze act from the pilot where he deliberately aligned himself. Goodness me, I'm sorry. You can see there the second tower, it does appear, may well have been collapsing. It does appear that it has collapsed. We're not sure whether it is the first or the second tower. A major catastrophe in the United States. One of the towers of the World Trade Center has collapsed. This is a center that houses 40,000 employees on a daily basis. 150,000 people pass through that building. The Australian shopping centre group Westfield own the shopping plaza downstairs. We are yet to confirm if any Australians have been caught up in this apparent terrorist attack. The United States President has confirmed deep suspicions that it is a terrorist attack, and as I said, Middle Eastern television is confirming they have claimed some responsibility from a Middle Eastern group. Let's cross back now to CNN for all the details.
Evacuated, and the Treasury Department has been evacuated. Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, is exceptionally tense and clearly taking steps as if it is virtually under siege here. We don't know specifically, as you've said, what has taken place at the Pentagon, but this is very serious, striking at the heart of the national government. And as John King was explaining, the White House...
Frank, it's Aaron. I need to interrupt you for a second. Again, there has been a second explosion here in Manhattan at the Trade Center. We are getting reports that a part of the tower, the second tower, the one a bit further to the south of us, has collapsed. We are checking on that. We're also told that the Sears Tower in Chicago has been evacuated, and what I can't tell you on that is whether there was something specific that happened there, whether there was an attack on that building yet.
We have Michelle Stone, TEN's correspondent, on the streets of New York at the moment. Michelle, describe the chaos if you can.
Well, Sandra, you can probably hear it in the background. The streets have come to a standstill. There are rescue units and police everywhere, and all I'm seeing is hundreds and hundreds of New Yorkers and standing on the side of the street just absolutely immobilized by this tragedy. Just 60 seconds ago, I'm sure you've seen the pictures, the entire left tower just completely collapsed. There's people on their knees here, there's people praying, there's women hysterical. It's an incredible sight. Unless you actually are here to see, you can't imagine just how horrifying the situation is.
Michelle, describe for us, if you can, your proximity to the building. How far away are you from there? Can you actually see the World Trade Center and any of the debris? How close are you to the scene of the incident?
I'm very close, Sandra. I'm about as close as you can get. I'm about a kilometre from the scene. I can see absolutely everything except, of course, the immediate aftermath on the ground. The police are not letting anybody close because there were reports that perhaps another plane was going to come in and finish off the job, so they're keeping us a long distance from there.
Has the National Guard been brought in at all? I remember in Atlanta, when they believed that terrorist bombing had occurred, the National Guard was on the streets within minutes, it seemed. Is that a similar situation there tonight? Or this morning, rather?
Yeah, Sandra, it's hard to tell. I'm only getting snippets when I, get into a cab. But there are literally dozens of cars stopped on the side of the road with radios blaring, and everybody's gathered around the cars to hear what the latest is.
Michelle, we're told that there was absolutely no warning prior to these attacks, and yet on the back of the 1993 attack on the World Trade Center, I'm assuming the people of New York, while they may well be shocked, aren't completely surprised.
No, that's right. In fact, I just spoke to a local here. He witnessed the second plane come in and hit one of the towers, and he said that it's to be expected if you're the world superpower that you're going to be a target of extreme terrorism like this. And he was actually quite matter of fact. Now, the gentleman might have been in shock, but that was his perspective.
Michelle, we're told the president is attempting to make his way back to Washington to some sort of secure bunker. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the Pentagon, there has been an explosion there. The White House has been evacuated. In terms of New York City, the entire country has been ground to a halt. Aviation across the country has been paralysed. And I'm assuming on the streets it is, of course, no different. I'm assuming mass evacuations are underway, and that's really all you can tell us at this point. Are you seeing any, sort of sense of massive security other than things like the National Guard coming in? Are you getting this sort of sense of terrorism really being at the hub of this in terms of what you're seeing?
I think there's absolutely no doubt about that. There's also reports coming out of Chicago that they are evacuating Sears Tower there, which of course is the country's tallest building, and various other institutions in that city. A real fear has gripped New York, and I think that these people standing around are just in a state of absolute disbelief. The streets are completely shut down. You cannot get in or out of Manhattan. In fact, you cannot get down this end of Manhattan anymore. All the airports are shut down, as you said. The place is a complete disaster area.
Michelle, any idea at all on casualties? What are you seeing in terms of people leaving that area, in terms of the circumference of the blast and the impact?
The circumference of the blast is the effect of it is being felt at least 3 or 4 city blocks in terms of damage. I'm not gauging from any reports or anybody yet the numbers of casualties, but you must remember that this is a 110-story complex and 40,000 people work there every day. And if you've already lost one tower, it's easy to do the sums to determine how many casualties there are.
The other thing that needs to be kept in mind here, Michelle, is that this first explosion occurred, or the plane crash, at 10 minutes to 9, a typical Tuesday morning in New York. The streets of New York, streets of Manhattan would have been crowded.
That's exactly right. And of course, remembering that the World Trade Center is down in the financial hub of Manhattan, the New York Stock Exchange has been evacuated, and this is probably the busiest business district of the entire island.
All right, Michelle, it does...
Sorry.
I'm sorry. It does appear we may have lost Michelle temporarily, so let's cross back now to CNN for the continuing coverage of this extraordinary story, an apparent terrorist bombing in 2 cities in the United States, New York and Washington. And one of the towers of the World Trade Center has collapsed. Both have been targeted by planes. And the Pentagon, there has been an explosion. We will go to a break and we'll cross back to CNN straight after this.
She's New York's finest detective, but Kirkendall has one major problem she can't fix.
How you doing with that, Jill? Don, what do you mean?
Her husband.
I'm a miracle baby. I came back from the dead.
This season, Jill's fighting for her future.
You're gonna lose everything. No, I got what I need.
Her family.
Is he alive?
Jill, trust me.
And her survival.
If he's hurt Frank, don't you think he's gonna try to kill you?
NYPD Blue returns 9:30 Thursday.
JB Hi-Fi is slashing prices on Jamiroquai. The kings of 21st century funk are back. And their latest album, A Funk Odyssey, featuring the hit single Little L, is about to blow the charts apart. Especially with the strictly limited edition bonus CD thrown in at JB Hi-Fi. They're open till 9 p.m. weekdays. JB, done it again.
Advanced Hair Studio has now discovered an answer to hair loss. Now that's a fact.
In a recent clinical trial, Advanced Hair Studio actually regrew new hair within 4 months in 72% of men. Call now.
Where do you get the energy from? She's quite mad. Jan's also a great friend. I've met some great new friends through Introline. Why wait? Ring them today.
Introline. You've got to have friends.
Hello, Sydney here with bedding deals you only dream about. You get a queen-size slat bed with mattress, a fitted sheet, a flat sheet, a continental quilt with cover, 4 pillows and 4 pillowcases. Everything you need for a good night's sleep. Like the Kobe package, $4.99, the Pagoda package, $5.99, the Trinity package, $6.99, or the Nouveau package, $7.99. Sydney, the package deal king. With stores all over Melbourne, there's one near you. And still pay only $10 deposit with 2 years to pay.
So fresh, the real hits of spring 2001. So fresh. If you want the real hits of spring, you need So Fresh.
Welcome back to Network 10. We'll cross quickly back to CNN as this major story unfolds. Apparent terrorist attacks on 3 centres in the United States, both towers of the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Let's take CNN.
I mean, ambulances and special police vehicles. Some people have told us, although I can't confirm this, that dozens of stories of the building have fallen away, maybe down as low as the 30th floor.
Let's get him, Mike. And again, just because we lost a little bit at the beginning, where are you physically now? This is
I'm just south of the Holland Tunnel in downtown Manhattan, perhaps 10 to 15 blocks north of the World Trade Center.
Got it. And the pictures that our viewers are looking at, this was that collapse of the South Tower just a few minutes ago here in New York.
Yes, and moments after that, people began running toward us. And Jennifer Westover, who normally is at the stock exchange, was only about 5 blocks away, and she saw the same thing.
Alan, thank you. Let me go to one of New York's deputy mayors, Randy. Former deputy mayor. What are you hearing, Randy?
I only know what I have seen on television. I've tried to talk to some friends.
Here we go. Hand me the microphone. There we go.
I only know what I've heard on television. I've tried to speak to some friends. Obviously, phone lines communication is difficult. You know, nothing prepares you in life for a senseless tragedy like this one, but there is no city better prepared to deal with such emergency situations than New York City.
Tell me, based on the plan, what is happening 30 blocks away?
Sure. Mayor Giuliani established early on an Office of Emergency Management to coordinate all the government agencies involved. So you have coordinated leadership of police, fire, health, all the city agencies responding to that emergency. They've planned for this kind of event. Unfortunately, this is not a unique occurrence in the life of New York City or our country. Tragedies like this
It may
have
not be a unique occurrence, but it is a very rare and extraordinary one.
It is extraordinary, and therefore, in New York City, we have coordinated response, and they're responding now and providing every help that they can under these extraordinary circumstances.
Hang on one second. We have a report now of an explosion on Capitol Hill, and we are checking that out. We have a report of a plane crashing at the Pentagon being evacuated, fire on the mall in Washington, the State Department evacuated, and we have all flights shut down across the country as officials sort out what's happening here. Randy, back to you for a second. How much of the, well, if I recall this correctly, there is what was called a bunker, the mayor's bunker for these sorts of...
Leaving CNN momentarily, our correspondent Deb Knight, who has been travelling with the Prime Minister, who I might add is too, in New York, joins us now from the scene. Deb, obviously chaos is surrounding you. Describe the events.
Sandra, I'm actually in Washington with the Prime Minister. We have just heard a very large explosion. I'm in a building next door to the White House. We're trying to find out what that noise actually was. Obviously, we can see out of our window the Pentagon, smoke billowing out of the Pentagon building. We're unsure as to whether or not the White House, Capitol Hill, has actually been hit or not. The building has been evacuated, and the entire area has been cordoned off, and evacuations are occurring. It is absolute chaos. The metro system here in Washington has been totally shut down. The streets are being evacuated. There is a fire, as you just heard on CNN, on the mall in Washington. It's a matter of wondering what is going to be hit next. I've got to admit, it's really a state of shock here.
Obviously quite frightening and scary scenes. Deb, in terms of security for the Prime Minister and his entourage, what's happening there?
The Prime Minister has been staying in a hotel right next door to the White House. He had plans for functions today as part of his visit here to the United States. He's obviously been evacuated from this hotel. It's obviously in this very sensitive area. He's been evacuated to the Australian Embassy. At this stage, he and his entire entourage have been moved out of what is considered one of the most dangerous areas, obviously right next door to the White House. We're unsure as to how this is going to affect the rest of his US trip. Obviously, all flights have been cancelled across the United States. The country has effectively been shut down. So it's a state of, as everyone across the world is doing at the moment, a state of watching this unfold and wondering where to next.
Deb, in situations like this, when you're travelling with the Prime Minister, so many of the reporters stay together, there's quite a deal of close contact. Walk us through, if you can, the sequence of events from your perspective. What occurred and how did everything unfold from an Australian travelling perspective?
It was a matter of waking up here in Washington to what was effectively a lovely morning here. It's really warm weather here, getting up to the high 30s, quite balmy, and then just before 9 o'clock, hearing that the 9 o'clock here in Washington in the morning, hearing that the World Trade Center had been hit, effectively it was just thinking an accident. This had to have been an accident, seeing extraordinary pictures of the World Trade Center on fire and flames billowing from it, then a second plane hitting the World Trade Center. The assumption then immediately that this had to be some sort of a terrorist attack. We then hear the Prime Minister was holding a press conference on the Tampa, on the refugees here in Australia. That had been obviously held off and delayed. While we're all glued to the television screen trying to find out what the hell is going on. The press conference went ahead, and as it was going on, the Pentagon was hit. And we walked out of this press conference with the Prime Minister and see out of the window the Pentagon with smoke billowing out of the building. I'm then sitting here trying to find out what is going on in Washington, and then, minutes before I started talking to you, we hear another explosion coming from nearby at Capitol Hill. As I say, I really am not sure what's happened there. It's extremely emotional. We're surrounded by people who do work here in Washington, unsure as to whether their friends, their relatives, their family have been affected, because there's obviously a large community who work in all of these buildings. It's really emotional. It's really difficult to work out what's going on, and it's affecting everyone.
Deb, are you still on the line there?
Yeah.
I can only assume that everyone is in a state of shock. I'm wondering if you've made direct contact with the Prime Ministerial Party itself, and if so, can you tell us, how they're reacting on a personal level? This has got to come, as you say, not necessarily as a shock, but not necessarily as a surprise. But when you've got travelling prime ministerial entourages, not to mention the safety of the entire American populace, these people are briefed on security at the highest level before every overseas trip. And of course, they're briefed on any likely security risks. So in a situation like this, and given your experience and contact with the Prime Minister and those travelling with him, have you been able to talk with them directly at all and get a sense of how the Prime Minister's feeling? I mean, there's got to be enormous anxiety amongst everyone.
Well, Sandra, the Prime Minister, as I said, did hold a press conference which was planned on the totally unrelated issue of the HMAS Tampa and the refugees on board the Menorah, and that was to be the subject matter. Obviously, we'd seen these pictures. He walked into the press conference, and the first thing he did say was to express his enormous shock, and he said it's an enormous tragedy. He wasn't sure. Obviously, it had just started. We just found out what was going on. He expressed personal personal shock that everyone is feeling. So the Prime Minister himself knows he's feeling what we all are feeling, and obviously trying to get a grip on how Australians are being affected here in Washington, because there is a huge community of Australians who work here. Apart from, it doesn't matter, I guess, what nationality of people are being affected, but the Prime Minister would obviously be thinking that himself. I mean, it's one of those things, we were joking about this, the fact that terrorism is something that we can't relate to, really, as Australian reporters here in the United States. You think terrorism, okay, maybe they're a bit over the top at the White House. Yesterday we were in the White House checking into the building, and you think, what? They're so over the top. Really, you can't get an understanding that terrorism is such a real threat, and here it is being played
Let's
out.
start from the head. Sorry, Deb. We're just needing to.
That's fine, Sandra. In terms of what is going on, I can't see any smoke at all coming from the Capitol building. But as I say, we did hear a loud explosion, and.
All right, Deb.
And I'm looking at pictures here, and we're seeing that it seems to be free of smoke. So, I'll stay in touch. I don't know what's going on, apart from trying to find out if anything else is being heard.
Stay in touch and stay safe. We'll be crossing back to you shortly. We've just got some other information to hand, and we can confirm in terms of the sequence of events tonight that at about 10 minutes to 9 in New York Eastern Standard Time, a plane crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center in New York. We are just replaying vision now of the second plane as it makes its way towards the second tower. You can see the explosion there, so we'll try and replay that vision. Here it is now. Eyewitnesses have described it as a kamikaze act. They did claim that it appeared the plane was aimed directly for the middle of the building, and you will see minutes later one of those towers tumbling into the streets of New York. It is a significant catastrophe, a national tragedy. And within an hour, both towers were targeted within a 20-minute period. Within 1 hour, a third explosion was felt in Washington, way down the eastern seaboard, but of course the national capital. There's mass evacuations across the streets of New York and Washington. We are showing you now vision from Washington. No, we're still on New York, but we'll be bringing you vision from Washington shortly. We have got some great ground vision here where you can get an idea of what the scenes are like in New York right now. There are at least 4 city blocks that have been destroyed. Some information that is eking out of the United States is that one of the planes was an American Airlines flight number 11. They believe it departed from Boston Airport on its way to Los Angeles. Again, we can confirm at this stage only about 6 people have been confirmed dead and several thousand injured. A Palestinian group has claimed responsibility on Middle Eastern television. Abu Dhabi television has claimed they have received a call from the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, largely indicating that it was a terrorist attack. As we have mentioned earlier, the President has addressed the nation, and he too believes there is an apparent terrorist attack, if not 3, of course, thus far. Aviation across the country has ground to a halt, and this significant catastrophe and story is still unfolding. The FBI is attempting to try and get a handle on this situation as best it can. We also believe the former President of the United States, Bill Clinton, security cordon has been clamped around him. He is currently up in northern Queensland, and security forces are on high alert in this country as well. Don't forget, our own Prime Minister is in the United States at the moment, and we'll be crossing back to our reporters on the ground there as quickly as we can. We'll go to a break now and be back with more here on 10.
Imagine living like this.
You wanted to have a little baby? Have it in the street.
Then one day, a twist of fate, a terrible accident.
And you wake up to this. Oh my God.
I'm Bill.
He's rich.
Let's ask the servants.
He's beautiful.
Could you elaborate?
Real beautiful. He's suspicious.
She's hiding something.
He's straight.
Is that a derogatory term?
And he's falling in love. Brendan Fraser, Oscar winner Shirley MacLaine and Ricky Lake in the romantic comedy Mrs. Winterbourne, Friday.
JB Hi-Fi are smashing prices on Jamiroquai. The kings of 21st century funk are back. And their latest album, Of My Goddessy, featuring the hit single Little L, is about to blow the charts apart, especially with the strictly limited edition bonus CD thrown in at JB Hi-Fi. They're open till 9 p.m. weekdays. JB, done it again.
Hello, Sydney here from the new look Sydney Lounges and Bedding. Did you know that Sydney Lounges has one of the largest range of leather lounges in Melbourne? All at Sydney's famous discounted prices. The recliner suites start at $19.99, and there's the Dino suite at $23.99, the Bathurst recliner suite at $2,999, or the Presca 100% cow leather, only $3,299. With 12 great locations, we have a leather lounge to suit you. And pay only $10 deposit with 1, 2 or 3 years to pay.
It's on this weekend. Gary McMillan Toyota's Festival of Savings. More than 300 vehicles, everyone discounted to sell this weekend. New Toyotas from $14,990. Used cars from $7,000. All with a 15-month warranty. New and used four-wheel drives, all dramatically discounted. All at Gary McMillan Toyota, just up the High Street in Preston, where Gary says, I won't be beaten.
Advanced Hair Studio has now discovered an answer to hair loss. Now that's a fact.
In a recent clinical trial, Advanced Hair Studio actually regrew new hair within 4 months in 72% of men. Call now.
Come on. So fresh, the real hits of spring 2001. So fresh. If you want the real hits of spring, you need So Fresh.
Sandra Sully here at Network 10 with this breaking story tonight. Terrorist attacks across the United States, at least down the eastern seaboard. Our reporter on the ground in Washington, Deb Knight, has just checked in with us. She's confirmed they are evacuating the building that she is currently in. A car bomb has just exploded outside the State Building in Washington, which is several blocks from the Pentagon and also the White House. You can see there pictures from both scenes of terrorist attacks. New York City, as we mentioned earlier today, at 10 minutes to 9 Eastern Standard Time in New York City, 2 planes within a 20-minute period crashing into the World Trade Center. You can see the vision there of that second plane. Witnesses, as I've mentioned several times before, describing it as a kamikaze attack. Within an hour, less than an hour, one of the towers started to topple down onto the streets. Within an hour, a terrorist attack again on the Pentagon, this time in Washington. Since then, the White House has been evacuated, and we have confirmed, initially we thought, earlier reports indicated it may have been a helicopter that was seen by eyewitnesses circling the Pentagon, but sources are now confirming a third plane did career into the Pentagon. Aviation across the United States has been ground to a halt. The Prime Minister currently of Australia is in Washington, and we're not sure yet exactly when he may well be free. As you can imagine, all world leaders currently in the United States, and it's been a fairly busy time. In recent periods, there's massive security cordons in place. The former President of the United States is currently touring Australia at the moment, and significant security has been increased around him, and he is currently travelling in northern Queensland. So just confirming, still no idea on casualties, but there is... I'm sorry, it does appear that we have Deb Knight again on the streets of Washington. Deb, are you with us?
Yes, Sandra, I am here. Listen,
what can you tell us about this car bomb on the State Building?
Okay, the building that I am in, which literally is, a block away from the White House, is about to be evacuated. So if I drop off here at any moment, it's because I'm going to have to leave. Basically, as I was on the phone to you about 10 minutes ago, or a few moments ago, I heard a very loud explosion which came from the direction of the White House, of Capitol Hill. We weren't sure what that was. We've just found out that a car bomb has exploded outside the State Building in Washington, which is itself a few blocks from
Deb,
the White House.
just interrupting you momentarily, the second tower of the World Trade Center is currently collapsing. This is absolutely extraordinary pictures we're watching here now.
You can see large pieces of the building falling. You can see the smoke rising. You can see a portion of the side of the building now just being covered on the right side as I look at it, covered in smoke. This is just a horrific scene and a horrific moment. The president, who is in Florida today, is en route back to the White House. He took off a short time ago. The White House itself has been evacuated on the basis of what the Secret Service says was a credible threat on the mansion itself. We believe now that we can say that that portions of both towers of the World Trade Center have collapsed. Whether there were second explosions, that is to say explosions other than the planes hitting them, that caused this to happen, we cannot tell you. Rose Arce, one of our CNN producers, is on the phone. Rose, what do you got?
I'm about a block away, and there were several people that were hanging out the windows right below where the plane crashed, when suddenly you saw the top of the building start to shake, and people began leaping from the windows in the north side of the building. You saw two people at first plummet, and then a third one, and then the entire top of the building just blew up, and splinters of debris are falling on the street. Where I'm right now, there's a thick plume of smoke, and you can see crowds of people, including emergency service workers and police officers, running from the scene, screaming. And there's a school nearby where there were kids in the schoolyard. That has been emptied out, and they're running up the street now, too. The whole sort of the neighborhood, I'd say several blocks up, is covered by this almost powdery smoke, little tiny pieces of building you can see just floating in the wind around it. It's almost like a huge cloud had kind of enveloped that part of lower Manhattan.
It is just one of those awful moments that you need to look at for a minute or two to absorb exactly what has happened. Two of the most recognizable buildings in the city of New York have been attacked, and both of them appear to have collapsed, at least in part. The second of the two collapses taking place just a moment or so ago, perhaps 2 or 3 minutes ago. There are also apparently coordinated...
We're just cutting back into the CNN live coverage. We'd like to show you again this extraordinary vision. Moments ago, the second tower of the World Trade Center apparently tumbling and collapsing onto the streets of Manhattan. Absolutely horrific, horrendous scenes in the United States. Just hang with us, you will see the second tower. This is within about 2 hours of the first plane crash into this one tower. Eyewitnesses on the ground were saying just prior to this vision, they saw people leaping from windows, screaming for help, as you can imagine, emergency crews desperately trying to assist people in any way they can. Teams on the ground there, unfortunately, somewhat used to this sort of episode. Don't forget, 1993, this very precinct was the target of a terrorist attack where 6 people were killed, and members of a Palestinian uprising and protest group did claim responsibility. Again, today we can confirm. Apologies there, we are getting reports another explosion may well have hit just near the Trade Center. In terms of terrorist attacks, we can confirm Middle Eastern television, in fact Abu Dhabi television, is confirming that, or claiming that they have received a call from a Palestinian group claiming responsibility for these attacks. Thick plumes of smoke rising there from what was the World Trade Center, a significant precinct in the area, a block or two away from the New York Stock Exchange. New York is being evacuated. Washington is being shut down. The entire United States is in a scene of mass chaos and pandemonium. Stay with us here on 10. We'll bring you the latest.
Premiering Sunday. What if death paid you a visit?
Your dad? Yes.
And fell in love with your daughter?
You like him, don't you? Easy, Bill. You give yourself a heart attack and ruin my vacation.
Brad Pitt, Anthony Hopkins, in a romance beyond heaven and earth.
I love him.
I don't care if you love him. What I want is Susan. You're violating the laws of the universe.
Tim's breathtaking premiere.
The time has come to tell you who I am.
Joe, I'm afraid.
Meet Joe Black, 8:30 Sunday.
No time to work out? Fed up with exercise videos that become so repetitive? Tired of ad products that force you onto the floor? The future of fitness is finally here. Introducing the amazing Abtronic fitness system from Danos Direct. Get ready to firm, tone, and tighten your upper abs, lower abs, and love handles with no sweat. Abtronic is safe and simple to use. You control the 10 intensity levels and choose from 6 exercise programs. Watch as your ab muscles contract as if you're doing the sit-up. Your muscles are moving, but you're not. Use Abtronic to work out while watching TV, shopping, working, walking, anywhere, anytime. 10 minutes on the Abtronic is equivalent to up to 600 sit-ups. And because there are no wires or pads, it's easy to wear the Abtronic under your clothes. The amazing Abtronic fitness system is only available through this special TV offer from Danos Direct. Get the results you've been searching for and call 1-800-808-938 now. Other electronic machines sell for as much as $600, but the Abtronic fitness system is available to you for only 4 easy payments of $55 plus postage and handling. But for a limited time, you can purchase the Abtronic for only 3 easy payments of $55 plus postage and handling. That's 1 full payment off the normal price. Order now and you'll receive this comprehensive Abtronic instruction manual. Plus, you get the exclusive Abtronic Advanced Weight Loss Guide that offers you an eating plan that'll make you slim and trim, as well as 2 lithium batteries. All valued at $30, but yours free. And remember, Abtronic is a powerful machine, so follow the instructions carefully and get the results. And when you pay by credit card, you'll also receive this handy traveling bag valued at $20, absolutely free. When you take advantage of this special offer, we'll send you at no extra charge a second shorter belt to use on your thighs or arms. So call Danos Direct now on 1-800-808-938 or check out the Abtronic fitness system as well as hundreds of other innovative products online at our totally secure website, danos.com.au.
You're with Network 10 as we take you back to live pictures from the United States. In fact, we'll recap momentarily. We can confirm there have been at least 3 terrorist attacks on the United States, essentially grounding the country to a halt, as you can see there. This was actually the second plane into the second tower. The first crash occurred, as you can see, the first tower is closest to you there at the front of screen. Plumes of smoke emanating from the top of that tower. And a second plane within 20 minutes careers into the second tower of the World Trade Center. And within about an hour, or an hour and a half rather, both towers of the World Trade Center had collapsed into the street. You can see the first tower going there now. Don't forget these towers, we're talking 110 stories high, housing at least 40,000 workers and 150,000 people making their way through that center at any given time of the day. The second tower of the World Trade Center about to collapse now. As you can see, just extraordinary scenes from the United States.
Designed the World Trade Center.
We're told from eyewitnesses that people were seen leaping from the tower minutes before these final explosions. And we're also led to believe there may well have been another explosion nearby on the streets of New York. Don't forget, this precinct was the scene of a terrorist attack back in 1993. If it's any consolation, of course, authorities in New York are well briefed and were, as best as can be, prepared for a situation like this. You're now seeing pictures from both Washington and New York. These are live pictures, and as you can see, plenty of smoke. We can't get too close to the action, and it looks like CNN may be crossing to one of their reporters, but we would like to confirm some more detail, and that is, in particular, in Washington, when the Pentagon was struck, we are confirming that a plane hit the helipad outside the Pentagon. Within minutes, terrorist calls were received at the White House, and the West Wing of the White House was evacuated immediately. This does appear to be live pictures from the streets of New York. I can't yet determine whether the National Guard is there, but we are led to believe, given New York's history of terrorist attacks, there has been a coordinated plan in place for such an event, as best as you can prepare for these sorts of things. And there's an integrated approach between police, fire and, of course, health services, desperately trying to receive those and get to those injured, help any of those in great distress and alleviate some of the anxiety as best one can. One can only assume the absolute shock and fear that's emanating across the country. As we mentioned earlier, aviation across the country has been ground to a halt. All takeoffs and landings have ceased. There is some concern that some of these aircraft may have been hijacked, and the only way to contain the situation is to ground everything to a halt till they can determine some details. The US President is back in Washington. He has addressed the nation and has called for calm. The FBI, as one would expect, has been dragged in immediately to try and contain the situation, and a reminder that a Palestinian liberation group is claiming responsibility thus far, although that cannot be confirmed as yet. Who is responsible? Let's cross now back to CNN for further details.
Phone calls through as you look at the Pentagon, and I suspect we are also getting a report as you look at these pictures of the Pentagon, and I, in all honesty, suspect you see them a little more clearly than I do, but part of the building appears to me, as I look at it, to have collapsed. That's the Pentagon, and those pictures are live at 10:40 Eastern Time this morning. We have a report now of a fourth explosion at the Trade Center, and Brian Palmer, CNN correspondent, is as close as he can get to the area. Brian, what can you tell us?
We are, in fact, as close as we can get. I'm not going to give you an exact time frame, but several minutes ago we were standing in front of the United States courthouse when we saw the second World Trade Center disappear from the skyline. It collapsed before our eyes, again, in a plume of ash and debris. People rushed north. We had a New York City Police Department officer here with us who witnessed the first collapse, but he actually had to dash off to duty. We've been watching people crying. Some people had relatives in the buildings. They're not sure whether they are whether they've been evacuated, removed for the buildings, or not.
Was there, Brian, did it sound like there was an explosion before the second collapse, or was the noise the collapse itself?
Well, from our distance, I was not able to distinguish between an explosion and the collapse. We were several hundred yards away, but we clearly saw the building come down. I heard your report of a fourth explosion. I can't confirm that, but we heard some boom, and then the building fold in on itself.
We are told, Brian, hang on, we're told that the Secretary of Defense is being evacuated from the Pentagon. The Pentagon, a portion of the Pentagon has collapsed after, and I'm not precisely sure on this, and I want to tell you when I'm not precisely sure, but apparently a plane or helicopter hit part of the Pentagon itself. As you take a look at the pictures there, I must say every time we hear a plane coming up overhead, it gets a little nervous where we are. Whatever is happening and whoever is responsible, we have no way of knowing if it's played out yet or if it's just going on. So every time we hear a plane go by, we wonder what the situation is and where it is headed. That sound, we're told by a person here, they believe that is a fighter jet. Federal office buildings around the country, is that correct? All over the country have been closed, or just in Washington?
Well, we were not allowed into the federal courthouse here where CNN maintains a workspace. The officers just said, we're not allowing you in. I think that's a security precaution.
Got it. Stay with me a little bit. All federal office buildings now, all federal office buildings in Washington, D.C. Are being evacuated as we speak to you now. There are a variety of reports, and it's important to try and put this in some kind of order, but the most important things to tell you if you're just joined in is that what has all the makings of a An extraordinarily well-planned terrorist attack on both Washington and New York has taken place this morning. The trade centers here in New York, the 2 World Trade Center towers have collapsed after being hit by a plane. Maria Hinojosa joins us on the phone. She is in New York, down near the building. Maria, what can you tell us?
Well, I'm actually at St. Vincent's Hospital right now, where at about 40 to 45 minutes after the first explosion, they started seeing patients here. What I'm hearing, and I have not been in the ER yet, is that they have at least 100 patients or more, that several of those people were dealing with issues of smoke inhalation, many of them throwing up, that there were several people who went directly to the operating room who are in very critical condition. Outside the hospital, people are coming in trying to help, to donate blood. Essentially, everybody here at this hospital is in a state of shock. I mean, I walked into the testing area, and the women here who usually just draw blood are also extraordinarily moved and shocked. They're moving in and out of the emergency room to try to help as many people as possible. Now, outside a block, about a block away from here, where you really had a bird's eye view of the 2 twin towers, which are the landmarks of New York City, people stopped, the entire traffic has stopped. People have poured out of buildings and were watching, in fact, as one of the towers collapsed. And then you're really seeing a lot of people trying to move north, away from any place downtown near the World Trade Center area. People are just walking. The subways are stopped entirely all around the area of the World Trade Center. You can't get below 14th Street. And there just feels to be like a massive exodus of people walking north to get away from the area as far away as they possibly can.
Maria, I know Kitty Pilgrim is with you as well. Kitty, tell us what you've been able to...
We'll drop out of CNN's coverage now for the minute and go to a break. Stay on 10. All the details coming up right after this.
Bad girl.
The truth is, that little girl wasn't such a good girl.
Rich girl.
The old money seems to be getting a bit arthritic.
Dead girl.
2 motives, 1 possible killer. Pick one.
Law and Order. 8:30 Thursday on 10.
Getting rid of unwanted hair is as painful as a visit to the dentist. You rip, pluck, nick, and cut. There's gotta be a better way. Introducing Apple Stop Citrus Spray, the 6-in-1 citrus hair remover that's totally pain-free. Look, just spray the hair you want removed, then simply wipe it away. That's all you do. And you've got silky smooth skin every time.
It went on smooth, it came off smooth. I was like, wow, it's a spray.
Spray and wipe it away.
The secret is the 6-in-1 citrus lotion that contains an effective hair remover, a gentle exfoliator, vitamins E and C, aloe vera, and enriched antioxidants to smooth and deeply moisturize, leaving your skin hydrated, softer, and hair-free. It's perfect for arms, legs, bikini line, underarms, and almost any other body part. And it works for women and men of all ages, long hair or short. Apple Stop Citrus Spray is even strong enough to remove tough, unsightly back hair. Just spray and wipe away. Look at the difference. Amazing. Stop shaving, stop waxing, and stop wasting money. Order Apple Stop Citrus Spray right now and never, ever worry about the pain of removing embarrassing hair again. But this offer gets better. We'll include a second bottle absolutely free. This travel size is perfect for your purse, gym bag, or luggage. That's 2 bottles of Apple Stop Citrus Spray for just $59.95 plus postage and handling. When you pay by credit card, you'll receive Apple Stop Citrus Roll-On. Use it just like a pencil to target and remove unwanted facial hair. Sculpt beautiful eyebrows, remove hair on your chin, or get rid of that embarrassing hair above your lip for good. A $20 value, yours free. The complete Apple Stop Citrus Hair Removal System. $100 value can be yours for just $59.95. Order now from Danos Direct on 1-800-808-938. Or check out the Apple Stop Citrus Spray, as well as hundreds of other innovative products online at our totally secure website, danos.com.au.
Hello. Hello. Glenn's not here right now. He's at the nuclear plant. Please leave your name and number and he won't return your call.
The Panel, 9:30 tonight.
Welcome back to Network 10's coverage of this breaking story. Terrorist attacks across the United States down the eastern seaboard. thus far. And, of course, the United States somewhat paralysed at this point. The vision we're showing you now is the second plane crash into the second tower of the World Trade Center. The first tower, as you can see, alight there, plumes of smoke emanating from the top of the floor. These are 110-storey buildings. That second plane, according to eyewitness reports, deliberately aiming at the centre of that building and targeting the second tower.
Stay home, stay safe, and be as relaxed as
Within
you can.
about an hour or just over an hour and a half, the first one of those two towers then collapsed onto the streets of Manhattan. The second tower tumbling a short time later. We are yet to confirm casualties, injuries, the number of people who may have been killed. It is a frightening thought. These two buildings house 40,000 employees, not to mention over 150-odd thousand making their way through the building at any given time during the day. The Australian shopping centre group Westfield, owning the shopping plaza downstairs. We're yet to hear if any Australians have been caught up in this drama. No doubt they have. All flights across the United States have been ceased after, of course, the New York explosions, then the Pentagon. The White House has been evacuated. Let's cross now back to CNN for more information.
I manipulate Big Pete into doing what I want to do.
Extraordinary bit of information coming out of Washington now. Let me add to something that we said earlier. We have a report now that a large plane crashed this morning north of the Somerset County Airport, which is in western Pennsylvania, not too terribly far from Pittsburgh, about 80 miles or so. Boeing 767 jet, don't know whose airline it was, whose airplane it was, and we don't have any details beyond that which I have just given you. We don't know if this is somehow connected to what has gone on in New York and Washington, but we do know that another plane has crashed, this one about 80 miles south of Pittsburgh, or at least to the southeast of Pittsburgh. Rose Arce, one of our producers here in New York, joins us on the phone. Rose, what do you have that's new?
Yes, just a while ago, I think you saw that collapse of the top of the World Trade Center. Well, it looks like a large chunk of that debris has hit a building very close by, about 2 blocks away next to an elementary school, causing another explosion. So for the last few minutes, I've been watching people running from that direction. There was one man, I'm not child, but he saw on the street. I've seen several emergency service workers carrying other emergency service workers from the scene. There's a haze everywhere. It's very, very difficult to see.
We need to interrupt CNN's coverage here. We are led to believe another hijacked plane, a suicide mission, is on its way to the Pentagon as we speak, minutes away from what is a second attack on the Pentagon, a fourth attack this evening in the United States. Just recapping, we are led to believe another